much. I'm very grateful, very honored and humbled to be a part of this webinar and to get to do it with Gala. Fantastic group providing wonderful services for the people that are providing more impact to the community, really, than just about anybody else. So thank you so much for your time for this today. And like Kim said, my name is John Mark Vanderpool. I'm the co-founder of Social Impact Solutions. I'm excited to dive into how every organization can leverage story to advance their cause and ideally raise a lot more money. That's what we're all about. But before we do that, we've got two questions that we would love to poll the audience with. This first one, Kim, if we can go ahead and put that in the chat. How do you feel the current economic climate will affect your fundraising efforts? Love to know. All right, y'all are streaming and everyone is on top of it today. Fantastic. This is consistent with what we're seeing, right? We're seeing a good percentage of people saying that the current economic climate will significantly affect fundraising for 2023. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that specifically today. And then can we go ahead and pull up the second poll question too? That'd be great to go ahead and throw that out there. Do you believe that you have a robust fundraising plan in place regardless of the economy? Okay. Got about 50% saying no, 25% saying yes, and about a third saying I'm not sure. So really, we want to build robust systems that work despite the economic environment, right? We want to build robust marketing and fundraising plans that aren't at the whim of the economy, aren't at the whim of whomever is, running our respective governments. We want to have plans in place, and the most effective way we can do that is by taking charge of our fundraising capacity. And what we found and what we believe in very, very strongly is that story is one of the most effective levers that we can pull for nonprofits. And so I want to go ahead and dive in to this presentation. And I'll tell you what, it's going to be a lot of fun today. We're going to have lots of time for Q&A. But there's some interesting things that stand out. I've given this presentation many, many times, and I can assure you by the end of it, you're going to walk away thinking very differently about marketing and fundraising. That's what's so fun, that you're going to become what we like to call marketing snobs. So Meredith and Kim, I'm sorry, we're all marketing snobs. I'm going to go ahead and throw that out there. But we're going to know why some messaging and marketing and fundraising plans work. But more importantly, we're going to know why a lot of them do not, so we never make those same mistakes over and over again. And the first thing I want to dive into is that most organizations, it says companies, but we're talking about nonprofit organizations, waste an enormous amount of money on marketing. And you might kick back and say, John Mark, that's not true. I don't spend any money on ads, so I'm not wasting money on marketing. I'll say, actually, you are spending a lot of energy and effort in communicating the value of your nonprofit, and I would venture to say that a significant percentage of this might be wasted simply due to how you are communicating your value. So before I go on to tell you how to do this the right way, I want to show you how most organizations mess this up. This is a landing page, a homepage for a website that is doing some things right, but doing the most important things wrong. And I want you to write down three things. There's something that we call the grunt test in the StoryBrand space. The grunt test is within 3 to 5 seconds, a website visitor, ideally your donors, they need to know who you are, what you want them to do to take action, but most importantly, how you are going to make their lives better. So think about that. Who you are, what you want them to do to take action, but most importantly, how you're going to make their lives better. So here we have this landing page. And honestly, it's very well designed. It's very well put together. It's a beautiful high-res image. If we were in person, I would go around the room saying, what do you think this company does? What do you think this company is all about? And you have this language that says, your journey starts here. Artisan, innovative solutions. These words don't make any sense. These words mean nothing in this context. I don't know what journey we're talking about. I don't know who you are. I've got an A with a line through it. I don't know what you want me to do to take action. I'm assuming get started, but get started on what? We actually have something in the top right that says, why start? All right, why start indeed? I have no idea. You haven't given me any reason, any compelling reason to want to start, and I don't even know where you're taking me. And so the reason why I say you have 3 to 5 seconds is because if you know anything about bounce rates, a bounce rate is when someone comes to your website and leaves in that time frame without clicking on anything. Most websites have enormously high bounce rates, and you are missing out on engaged donors. You are missing out on revenue opportunities for your nonprofit. So I want to go ahead and say it clearly. They need to know who you are, what you want them to do to take action, and most importantly, how you're going to make their lives better. So we've got to be able to pass the StoryBrand grunt test. I really hope you wrote those 3 points down. And here's the whole crux of the conversation around excellent marketing and excellent messaging, is that donors will only give to your organization after they read words that make them want to give to your organization. So again, ignore the people buy products. We're talking only about nonprofits, which is a favorite group of people to work with. Donors will only give to your nonprofit after they read words that make them want to. You could say read or hear words that make them want to take action to give to your organization. It's really, really important that we embody this. And this is why most organizations waste so much money on marketing. It's because they haven't taken the time to fix the message. You've got to fix the message. And you might be wondering, well, how do I fix the message? I have a very complicated nonprofit, and that's true. Nonprofit marketing is much, much harder than for-profit marketing. I've spent my entire life, I grew up working in a nonprofit family, going around the world doing disaster relief, week in, week out. That was the way that I grew up. Then I started working with nonprofits to help them raise a lot more money. We've been able to help nonprofits raise millions and millions of dollars just over the last few years alone. But I've also worked with venture capital firms, worked with e-commerce companies, worked with lots of businesses. And I can promise you that nonprofit marketing is more challenging. So I want to acknowledge that. But if you want to know how to really cut through the noise, you have to put yourself in your donor's shoes, in your funder's shoes. And you have to create messaging that is helping your donor survive and thrive. And you have to do it in a way that is helping them conserve calories. This is a little bit of Psychology 101, if anyone can remember back to their Psych 101 days. The human brain is trying to filter through life and find things that are going to help them survive and thrive, but they're doing so in a way that is helping them conserve calories. So when we're talking about our organizations, or when we're blogging about our organizations, or when we're tweeting or posting on social media, or when we're giving a fundraising presentation, we have to realize that the human brain, the people that are in the audience, they're trying to survive with hopes of thriving, and they're trying to conserve calories. So the words that we use is essentially we are putting someone's brain on a treadmill. That's what we're doing. We're putting people's brains on a treadmill, and depending on how confusing we are or how clear we are, if we're more confusing, we're cranking up the incline to 12 degrees and we're cranking up the speed 12 miles an hour. We are making them work really, really hard. They're having to burn way too many calories in order to understand the value that your nonprofit provides. While at the same time, we have the opportunity to be clear, and we bring the incline down to 0, and it's a slow Sunday afternoon walk. That's what we're trying to do. We need messaging that is easy to understand, don't have to burn any calories, but it's also aspirational and helping me survive and thrive as an individual funder. Another analogy. Let's imagine that you're at the proverbial, dinner party, and somebody asks you, "What do you do?" And you start talking about your nonprofit and all the great things that your nonprofit does. If it isn't helping this individual survive, thrive, and conserve calories, all you're doing is handing them bowling balls. That's all you're doing. I'm confusing. I'm throwing all of these things at you that have nothing to do with your survival and you thriving, has nothing to do with you conserve calories. In fact, I'm having to burn a lot of calories just to keep up with you. And then what do? They drop everything about you and they can't wait to exit the conversation, right? This happens all the time. I've been on both sides of this equation. I know when I'm looking at somebody trying to speak passionately about something I believe in and they're not picking up anything I'm putting down. It's because I'm talking about what I care so much about, not about what they care so much about. I'm not helping them thrive. I'm not helping them conserve calories. While at the same time, we've all been on the receiving end. You're like, man, get me out of this conversation. I'm having to work way too hard to understand what you're talking about here. So remember this, please write this down. If you confuse, you will lose. This is a massive, massive paradigm that clarity is the goal. Clear, pithy, easy to understand marketing. Confusion is the enemy of your success. I promise you, we've helped organizations raise so much more money when we just clarify their messaging and give them the kind of digital marketing, just really acumen and skill set they need to really amplify their fundraising efforts. But if you confuse, you'll lose. You might be saying, this sounds great, but what does this have to do with story? Well, let's move on to what story is and why we believe in story. The fastest way to cut through the noise, the fastest way to cut through surviving, thriving, and conserving calories is leveraging story, right? Story is a framework that has been around for thousands and thousands of years, right? If you go back to the Iliad and the Odyssey, Homer followed the same framework that George Lucas follows in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and present day. It's the same idea of using a story arc. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the best of the best out of Hollywood, the best out of the best writers in the world, and we're going to apply the same methodology to your nonprofit. So we're going to use story as a lever that you can pull to be more clear in helping your donors understand your value, to compel them to give more money to your nonprofit. This is where things get really fun. So if I get a little too excited, I apologize. This is what we live for at Social Impact Solutions. So now we're going to talk about what the StoryBrand messaging filter is and how you can use it. Every story begins with what? A character, right? There is a character. We're going to call them heroes. There's a character at the center of every story. If you think about Harry Potter, right? The wonderful book series that has sold jillions and jillions of books over the last 20 some odd years. Harry Potter is the center of that story. But what's interesting about a story arc is when you agitate the character's desire, then they enter into the story your brand is telling. You think about the first Harry Potter book, and I'm going back in time over here mentally. I can't remember how many years it's been since I've read it, but there was an agitation. Harry he knew that there was something different about him. He knew he had this unique skill set, right? He could talk to snakes and everything else. He knew there was something different, but he didn't know what it was. And then he finds out that, you're actually not just this oddball. You're a wizard, and there's this place you need to go to become a wizard. You need to go through all these trials and tribulations, right? All of that, but with the agitation of a desire. That is when when anyone enters into a new story loop. So story loop, story arc, we're going to use that phrase interchangeably today. But it's when you agitate their desire. Today, I want to be very clear. We're going to be talking about donors specifically. But like I said earlier, nonprofit marketing is more complicated. And that's because nonprofits have to talk about their cause, the mission that they serve, which is the whole thesis for your existence. But you also have to raise money from people who are not going to pay you or are not going to receive the benefit of your services. That's why nonprofit marketing is harder. It's because you have two parallel scripts, one for the cause that you serve, one for the donors that you raise money from. But today we're going to talk about donors. If you have questions about mission scripts, we can go down that path also. I would love to. But you remember, you have to have a character, but you have to agitate a desire. So the first step is there's a character in the story, but the character has a problem, right? There's a problem that your character has, not the mission that your donor has. And if you stop talking about those problems, they stop paying attention to your brand. You have to talk about their problems again and again and again. You want to do so respectfully. You want to do so within the right context. There are plenty of ways you can take this too far. We never recommend that. We want to talk about people's problems in a way that is appropriate. And again, talking about your donors' problems. Think about that. But if we stop talking about it, they're going to stop paying attention to our brand. The next thing, and this is so, so important. You have a character who has a problem, who meets a guide. This is you. You are the guide. Your donor or your mission. We're going to talk about your donors, though. Your donors are the hero of the story, not your nonprofit. You are the guide. And here's the good news. The guide is the strongest character in every story. Going back to Harry Potter, there were several guides in Harry Potter, but you can think of Dumbledore. He's been there, he's done that, he's been through all the trials and tribulations, he's the headmaster, he's all these wonderful things. He's the man, he's the guide. Your nonprofit is the guide. And you have to be sure that you are positioned as the guide, not the hero. This is the number one issue that we see, is that nonprofits position themselves as the hero. And then donors don't know where they fit in the story. I want that to sink in for a second. Nonprofits position themselves as the hero, and donors don't see where they fit. I see this all of the time. And this is usually the first thing that we fix. And when this problem gets solved, man, the kind of momentum that can be created is spectacular. But guides have to do several things really, really well. One, guides have to give their heroes a plan, a clear, easy to follow plan, or people won't take action, right? They will not step forward. But they also have to call them to action, right? Because if we don't call our donors to action, they won't take action. So guides are the leaders. Guides are saying, okay, character, this is the problem that you're dealing with. I know this is who you want to be. This is the desire that you have. And this is the problem that's getting in the way of that desire. Here are the steps that you can take, 1, 2, 3, to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Go take that first step. That's calling them to action. But they have to cast a vision of success and failure. Nonprofits that do this well stand out. I'm just letting you know right now, they stand out and they're a totally different category. When we cast a vision of success, of what their lives could look like as a result of giving to our organizations, man, now they can really start to see the future that you're trying to create. This is where things go to a whole new level. You're trying to cast a vision for the future. You've built this nonprofit. You've done all of this work. You've gathered all these resources. You've raised a lot of money, and you're serving people or your cause passionately. But as leaders, as guides, we have to cast a vision of what success can look like, what it should look like if they give, if they participate, if they invest their hard-earned money with our organization, if they volunteer, all of this. We get to cast what that vision looks like, cast that future. While at the same time, we also have to highlight that there are consequences if they do not give to our organizations. The consequences are real. And if we don't make them readily apparent, I just want to say this quickly, we can hit this drum too hard. We can go too dark down this path. But at the same time, if there aren't consequences, there's really no reason for them to give. So we have to be clear and we have to be very, very straightforward on, yes, there are consequences, but at the same time, we can create a better future together. All you have to do is give. That's moving forward. That's fabulous. So the StoryBrand marketing framework really does prompt these questions. What do our donors want? What kinds of problems are stopping them from getting what they want? Have we positioned our nonprofit as a guide to the hero? Have we created a clear plan for the hero to win the day? Do we have clear calls to action? And I want to be clear and consistent calls to action. Have we taken the time to help our hero imagine how we can improve their life? And have we identified the consequences we're trying to help them avoid? Think about that. These are the kinds of questions we have to be asking ourselves. Is our organization doing this? If not, that's where all of that nonprofit, marketing money is wasted. If we are, we're doing something really great and we can build a lot of momentum. Now, there's something called a StoryBrand brand script that answers all of these questions, or it doesn't answer them. It prompts you to put all of the answers to this question in a clear and concise way. This is where we can put everything together on, these are the only 7 pieces of marketing collateral you need to be using. This really is the difference in having clear and concise sound bites that anyone can understand versus throwing bowling balls at people. And remember, we live in a world of sound bites. Like, this is the world that we live in. So we've got to have clear communication on, what does our character actually want? What kinds of problems are they dealing with? How are we communicating that we're a guide? What's the plan? What's the clear, easy to follow plan for them to move forward? And then finally doing the same thing with calls to action and success and failure. There's one other thing that's on this brand script that I genuinely love is that we have character transformation. That before they were working with you, what did their life look like versus now, what does their life look like working with you? It's an excellent exercise. It's something super, super valuable that everyone should take advantage of. And it's what we love providing our beloved clients with as we work with them. I want to then go take a step back and acknowledge the bad before the good. We want to know how we can improve our marketing. And I didn't want to pick on any nonprofit and throw them under the bus. So this is a fantastic company, actually in Fort Worth, Texas, where I'm originally from. And again, if we were in a room, I would go around and ask the question, what does this company do? Who is this company for? What do they do? Do they pass the grunt test? Who are you? What do you want me to do to take action? And how are you going to make my life better? Okay, who are you? Equify. We strengthen your business. Okay, well, at least I know your name and you work with businesses, very, very vague. What do you want me to do to take action? Okay, you've got a little view inventory button right here. Okay, you want me to view your inventory? Okay, we have a contact us. Okay, you either want me to view inventory or contact, that's fine. How do you make my life better? Equify Asset Services, realizing confidence in your assets. Knowing that we only have 3 to 5 seconds to walk away with passing the grunt test, this absolutely fails the grunt test. Without question, fails the grunt test. Now, I could burn a lot more calories reading down here, and I have, and it's not very helpful. So the point is, this is a very, very low converting, very ineffective website that is not doing Equify any service at all. And I want to say this, your website should be your #1 development officer for your nonprofit. Absolutely should be your #1 development officer in attracting and converting ideal donors. That's the role of your website. And this one is not following that. And I love using this example because it's sort of an oddball example. It's way out there because you look at what their new website is. Okay, who are you? Equify, check, we got that. What do you want me to do to take action? Okay, it's a call now button. That's great. But how are you going to make my life better? Well, #1, it's very obvious who the hero of this story is, right? The hero of this story is this gentleman right here with his 2 sons. It's very obvious that the hero is a guy that works, he makes a living working on bulldozers, right? He literally is a heavy equipment operator is the term that's used. And these guys actually make fine money. They do quite well. But the headline here is 5 ways we make your company stronger. So if this gentleman winds up on this website and he sees a picture of someone that looks a lot like him, he's already like, okay, this website is for me. And that is the #1 thing that we're trying to do. We're trying to establish resonance with our ideal donors and with our brand scripts. We want to establish resonance. So you look at this, 5 ways we make your company stronger. And then you have a little subtext right here. We work closely with business owners to greatly improve their cash flow. Business owners love cash flow and protect them from risk. Who doesn't love that? While maximizing your value and creating peace of mind, right? All of this language, I want to help you, I want to help you, I want to help you. It's super, super clear. But how do you do that? Lending, insurance, auctions, and appraisal. So before, we don't really know who Equify is, what they do. Equify Asset Services is a phrase that doesn't mean anything to anybody, even to finance people. It's just a goofy phrase. It's not helpful. And I have no idea how they're making my life better. I come here, you tell me exactly how I'm making my life better, how you're making my life better by working with you. And this is just, the headline of the landing page. I could scroll down and go deeper and deeper, but in 3 to 5 seconds, I know exactly who you are, what you want me to do to take action, and how you're gonna make my life better. And that's what's so important about doing this the right way, is in 3 to 5 seconds, you can establish resonance with your ideal donors and really, really gain traction and momentum with them as well. Now, something special that we're doing for Keylet webinar attendees is that we've actually put together a quiz. It's a fundraising quiz. And Kim, if you don't mind putting this into the chat, just putting this URL, I would love for everyone to go in and fill out this fundraising quiz. It's fundraisingquiz.org, but please just click on the link in the Zoom chat. And you're going to find out exactly what your organization needs to work on in order to do one thing, to accelerate your fundraising. That's what I want you to do is go, this quiz should probably take you somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes to fill out. But you're going to know what you're doing well, maybe what you need to improve so that you can focus on fundraising acceleration for 2023. And then you're going to have all these results that come and say, hey, you need to now clarify your marketing material or dial in your messaging a little bit more on this standpoint from, fundraising, marketing, and clarity standpoint, so that your message is reflected in a clear and powerful way. Those are the kind of things that you're going to learn from this fundraising assessment. Again, just click on the link in the Zoom chat and you'll be able to roll from there. Go take the quiz from there and just pay attention to the results page. Pay attention to what kind of feedback you're getting and just be as honest and straightforward as you can on that fundraising quiz. I want to leave everyone with this message because I've seen this happen too many times, time and time again. You have an organization that's doing great work and they're so close to the work, they don't know how to distill it down into a simple, easy to understand phrase. And the consequences of that are confusing everyone else. You might have a very, very complicated delivered service offering that you provide for your beneficiaries, for the people that you serve. But donors will never understand the work that you do on any kind of level that you do. It will never happen. I can promise you they will never understand it unless they are leaving as an employee and becoming a board member, becoming a donor. They'll never understand the work that you do the way that you do it. So we have to take the time to pare things down into simple, easy to understand, but still compelling language that allows for people to really, oh, this is who you are. This is not how you're making my life better, but you're also serving this audience too. You're making their lives better. And I know the path that you're telling me to take in order to take action to create a better world. Because nonprofits exist to create a better world. That's the beauty of the nonprofit space. And the whole thing that we want to do is we want to help organizations raise more money so that they can do more good, so that they can raise more money, so that they can do more good. And day after day after day, create that better world. But we cannot do that if we're confusing our donors, our team members, our board members at all. We have to get clear first so that we can take people on this journey, give them this path so that they can move forward and win the day. I want to thank you so much for the time to do this presentation, but I would love to open up for Q&A. And Cam, I'll give it to you and with any questions that we might have.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Also, I must say, I love that if you confuse, you'll lose. Definitely put a smile on my face when I first saw that. That was very well done. We do have some questions that came in, so I'll jump right to them. The first one's actually wondering if you could go back and just reiterate your 3 key points that you mentioned towards the beginning of the webinar. We had that question come in from Sabrina.
Perfect. Sabrina, thanks for asking the question. It's called the grunt test, right? So just imagine that's the whole, caveman test of if a caveman can understand what you do, you're doing it right. So they need to know, one, when they go to your website, who is this organization? So imagine, is your logo present? Do you have your branded name somewhere close by? Who is the organization? Like, where am I? Kind of a question. So who are you? What do you want me to do to take action? In the name of all good things, please tell me there's a donate button, very, very obvious on your website. So it's donate now, give today, something like that. But then finally, how are you going to make their life better? And I can camp on this for a while, because if you remember me saying that the human brain is trying to survive and thrive, but also conserve calories, you're not helping your donors survive necessarily, right? That's not the kind of thing. You might be helping the people that you serve survive, which is wildly important, but you're helping your donors thrive in a way that is unique to them. Giving to an organization is really more about, how am I a contributor to society? That's a thriving kind of mechanism. This is way beyond Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're not trying for food, air, water, shelter. We're past that with our donors. We're talking about your donors. So they need to know who you are, what you want me to do to take action, and then how you're going to make my life better as a donor within 3 to 5 seconds. It's hard. It's really, really hard. And so just know that's the beauty of marketing, and that's how you have great marketing from bad marketing.
I love that. Just remember, we're working with people. It's the people that we are trying to touch and trying to connect with.
Yes.
We had a question from Joan wondering if you had any nonprofit website examples that you can share, or that you'd be willing to share later on a bit too, if you
Yeah.
need to collect those.
Let me put together a list for you, because I think there are some good ones out there that we can share. I'm going to make a quick note. Love to do that.
Great suggestion, Joan. We'll try to include that in our follow-up emails so that everyone can have access to those.
I trust that.
Yeah. Question from Angela. How do you determine how the donor can be the hero if they can't do anything, when the nonprofit is the one that's helping with the support? How do you relay that?
So this is the hardest part about marketing for nonprofits. This is the hardest part. So just understand that your job is harder. Okay, I want to go ahead and say this. I say this to nonprofit leaders all the time. I've run businesses, I've run nonprofits, I've been on both sides. It's harder. End of story. It's harder. So accept that you have chosen a very, very hard path. So that being said, that caveat out of the way, there's two different paths that we can take when it comes to building a brand script for a nonprofit. There's something called a donor-based script, which is what I focused on today. And there's something called a mission-based script. The mission, the hero of the story, is an individual that you serve or a cause that you serve. So think of it that way. But the call to action is for the donor to give now. Think about that. The call to action shifts to the donor to where I want you to give now. So another great example, I think this might be a little bit closer to your question. Let's say, here's an easy one. I think this is something that most people are familiar with. People that go on trips, like service trips abroad. So let's say right now there's a terrible earthquake that happened in Turkey and Syria, right? I mean, just horrific earthquake that happened 24 hours ago, something, very, very recent. Not everyone can pick up and leave, right? There are some organizations that are recruiting people. Team Rubicon's an awesome group. They're recruiting people to say, hey, we need to go. We need to provide quick care, urgent care quickly. So the call to action for some of those people, for some of those volunteers and donors, is hop on a plane. Let's go. We're going to Syria. But what about for people who can't do? Hey, give today to fund that good that is taking place, to fund those services. So Team Rubicon, I'm a huge fan of those guys. They have to have multiple messages. They have some heroes that are volunteers. Hey, we need you to hop on a plane and wind up in Syria. Or we need you, different person, to give us $500,000 to fund 65 plane tickets and hotels and food so that this good can be done. So it really is a matter of how do you differentiate the messaging there, because different donors, different stakeholders, let's just use that term, have different capacities to participate and give. Are you giving time away, or are you giving money? And I think this is a myth that needs to be consistently burst in the nonprofit spaces. Donors want to give to you. They want high net worth donors, every donor. Let's just talk about high net worth donors. They want to give. They want to invest in good. They just need to know, what is it doing? How's it making my life better? But what good is it creating? And you have to clearly communicate that. Say $10,000 provides, I'm making this up, guys. So $10,000 provides 10 plane tickets and 5 nights of shelter for a former Marine, for 5 former Marines to go provide care in Syria. Team Rubicon. That's just their whole thing. We need to have that kind of clear, compelling plan and those calls to action that say $10,000 does this in Bangladesh. $50,000 does this in our local community. Give now. Be a game changer. Be an impact creator. Be that person. That's what's so fun, is that when we get it right, it resonates and people can really feel it.
Was beautifully said, John. Thank you. This next question actually kind of ties into that, just that separation and how do you combat that? Good question. As a global health nonprofit, our donor audience is very different than the communities we serve. How can we establish resonance with our ideal donor on a landing page while the recipients of our efforts and the problems we are solving are so far away from our donors' daily lives?
I don't know who asked this question, but this is the world I grew up in. So I can completely feel every bit of angst and frustration that you may be having, because I've been like, how do we make this work? Right? How do we resonate? So we have to understand what motivates people to give. Right? You got to start there. And you have to go through the process of an ideal donor profile. Who are these donors? What do they want? We've got to build brand scripts for our donors. So that brand script process that we went through, what do they want as it relates to our nonprofit, right? We're not gonna promise them the moon. Yeah, they want Gucci belts and whatever else. No. What do they want as a result of your nonprofit as it pertains to? So we have to build that out. But then we also have to build out, what's our mission? What is the mission of the nonprofit? It's a different script, right? You might work with, I've mostly worked in sub-Saharan Africa and the Caribbean. That's where most of my time, and sometime in the Middle East as well. But it's a completely different world. All of those are different worlds. Each one of those are different worlds, different problems, different calls to action. However, we have to find where the lines intersect. And so this is a process of building a lot of brand scripts, not a lot, 3 to 5 brand scripts that really, really resonate with the target audience so that we can call them to action. Because I can assure you that these mistakes, these marketing mistakes, are extremely costly. We have to make it resonate. So to answer your question even further, this is what we do day in and day out to create that clarity. We have to go through ideal donor profiles. We have to build mission-based brand scripts, and then we have to reorient landing pages so that we're hitting the right audience the right way with the right message. Because this is another thing, and I'm probably beating a dead horse here, but your organization isn't meant for everyone, right? You are not all things to all people. Please resist the urge to, we'll take money from anyone so we can advance our cause. I love the spirit behind that. But from a growth standpoint, we need to be for a very specific group of people from a funding standpoint, so we can provide for very specific care for our beneficiaries, for the people that we serve.
Love that. I was just reading, Kristen mentioned a really good comment in the chat. She mentioned for this question, she loves to see photos and videos of what her donation gives, to see when that's possible, just to see where the money is going for the donor and that it's going to a right place. So that's a really great suggestion, Kristen. Thank you for sharing. Kind of switching it back to your storytelling script that you mentioned, we had a question from Brianna. When creating the 7 pieces of content and concise sound bites for the storytelling script, how do you keep the messaging fresh when consistently creating and sharing content, i.e. through social media?
Fabulous question. Really, really good question. The first thing I'll say, I'm really glad you asked this. The first thing I'll say is, you experience this story 5,000 times a day. This is something, you live and breathe what we're talking about. You're constantly thinking, wow, we probably need to refresh this, simply because you hear it all the time. That does not mean that your donors hear it all the time. There's that phrase that you need to repeat yourself 8 times for somebody to hear you once. That's in person. So imagine digitally. So imagine in that context, you can repeat yourself till you're blue in the face. So I strongly recommend that you make sure the message is right, but you don't necessarily need to refresh. Now, if you come back and say, John Mark, I've been publishing a blog or publishing on social daily for the last 15 years. Okay, we could probably have a conversation around a refresh, but understand that your people are probably not hearing your message enough. We are all about organizations repeating themselves again and again and again. And here's why. Marketing is a practice of memorization. And this is how you know your marketing is working. When an employee is saying the same things that you say, they're getting it. When a donor comes to you, someone asks a donor, hey, what does this nonprofit do? And they say exactly what you want them to say. Massive round of applause. You've just started to say it enough times. But how many times have you asked a team member or listened to a team member on a phone, on a fundraising call, be like, oh man, I wish you wouldn't have said it that way. It's because we cannot repeat ourselves enough. We genuinely cannot repeat ourselves enough with marketing. You can't do it. And so if your message is wrong, if it's inaccurate, let's fix it. It likely needs to be fixed. but it probably doesn't need to be refreshed in the sense of we need a new message. I just want to make sure that comes through clearly. And if there's a follow-up question on that, I'd love to answer that too.
That was amazing. Yes, if there's a follow-up to that, Brianna, please feel free to add it. But I was listening so intently to that because that is a question I have always so wondered throughout my day-to-day a lot. So thank you for asking that, Brianna. We had a question from Katie. Do you have a suggestion on how to use this format in a donor packet to solicit new donors before they have gone to the website?
This question was from Katie.
Yes.
Katie, you're a genius. Love it. Love this question. So we call them hero packets, something that we're all about building hero packets. So it's exactly what you're talking about. We really want to be super, super clear. They've never heard about you. And this goes back to the whole repetition thing. Imagine how, Cam, can I pick on you? Is that okay? Are you on social media?
Yes.
How many accounts do you follow just on Instagram?
Do I follow up? Probably, let's say 800.
Okay, 800. Do you think I could sit down with you and I've got a little, piece of paper. You could tell me all 800 of them just by memory?
No,
Do you
definitely
think
not.
do you think you could tell me 25?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think those 25 like actually stand for something like, oh yeah, I follow this person for this reason? Like, could you say, oh yeah, I follow X for Y reason?
If I remember them, yes, I would say
Yeah.
so.
Did y'all hear that? If I remember them, yes. So the idea here is we want to be in Kim's top 25. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're going for. If we can be in her top 25, it's because if I remember who this person is, I need to know exactly who they stand for because there's 775 other people that she follows. You're not the only nonprofit that these donors give to. So they need to know exactly who you are and what you stand for and what you stand against. Right? So for that international healthcare group, I apologize, I can't remember your name, of the person that asked the question, you stand against some pretty awesome things to stand against, right? Some terrible things that you're like, hey, this can't work. I'm the kind of person, I'm talking about you, that stands against these things. Donors love us because they know we do not tolerate cholera outbreaks. We know they don't tolerate, terrible, debilitating disease that exists across, sub-Saharan Africa. Insert problem. We stand against those things. So what do? We have to be so clear in what we stand for and what we stand against so that our donors are like, you know what? This is what I love giving to this person simply because I know who they are, what they stand for, and dang, they're putting in the work to put an end to this bad thing. And by default, they want to be associated with that. This is how you're helping them thrive. They want to be associated with someone who combats human trafficking. I'm giving away a lot of the secrets here, guys. They want to be associated with, whoa, that's what you stand for? And if I give you money, I'm a part of your tribe now. I mean, we're preaching now, right? Like, this is good. Like, this is the kind of thing where donors get fired up. And so it's really, really important that we cast that message. Pulling this back to the question that you asked. What this means is you have to be super clear in who you are, what you stand for, what you stand against, and what donors have to gain by when they give to your organization. That's that. If you have the opportunity to meet someone on the front end, you get to set the tone. And I implore you, boldly set that tone. Do not sheepishly set that tone. Set that tone if this problem is big enough for you to dedicate your life to it, the problem that your nonprofit stands to solve, to dedicate your life to this, be bold. Do not just sort of, oh yeah, all these, human trafficking is bad, but no, hit it as hard as you can. Say, we exist to end human trafficking. We exist to end cholera outbreaks. We exist to end whatever problem that you solve, or we exist to advance the causes of all of these different people. That's what you can do. You remember, you are setting that first initial impression for a new donor. Say, wow, I don't know who this person is, but I know what they stand for, and I know what I have to gain from when I give to them. That's how you wind up in Cam's top 25, is by doing that, by being that clear, that on the nose, that passionate, but that's smart too. I mean, this is an intelligent communication practice. So it's a lot of fun too. It's where things get really exciting.
Absolutely. I think donors, I can speak for myself, donors love exactly what you said, to feel like they're a part of it, even just through the donations. It makes them feel like they're part of your organization,
Right.
and that is something that they stand for. So could not have said it better. We had a question from Anna. She works for a large brand, Habitat for Humanity, and
Great
she's
group.
lucky because their impact can be tangible in making the job easier slash homes are being built. She tries and tells family stories as they resonate a lot with donors, but sometimes there's a struggle with families wanting to be anonymous for a variety of reasons. Do you have any ideas or suggestions how to do this with a degree of anonymity, or how someone can incorporate anonymity in their storytelling?
Absolutely. A lot of ways around this. And Habitat's a fantastic group. Love the work that y'all do. Been a massive Habitat supporter, Fuller supporter for many years at this point. That's awesome. Couple things that you can do just to be really, really smart. Be respectful of what your constituents want. They want to be anonymous. 100% give them the anonymity they've requested. Just do it. Now, ways you can work within that is, you use sample photos and sample fake names, things along those lines, while at the same time understand what donors are looking for, what impact is being created. Right? Donors are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they want to know the impact that your organization is creating. And actually, in that fundraising quiz, you're going to receive several questions regarding impact and how you're communicating that. So just keep that in mind. They want to know, what difference is this making? Stories are highly effective, highly, highly effective. They have been the number one reason why donors have given up until about 3 years ago. Impact data is now more important to funders than stories. So what's the answer? You got to do both. Tell stories with impact data. Let the impact data inform the stories. So really working within that realm. And that's why we're social impact solutions. That's why we help people raise a lot of money and measure their impact.
Okay. Thank you, John. Next question from Mahmood. Our nonprofit offers services to newcomers in York region. So should our hero be our clients or the donors? And how can we address both audiences on our website and social media?
Great question. That is going back to the donor-based script versus the mission-based script. If you have any other questions, actually, there's a complimentary discovery call that's included in that quiz that you can schedule with one of our team members, and we can dive a little bit deeper on that if you want to go even further on how you differentiate, because you have a unique problem that you're solving. Every nonprofit is different. Every single nonprofit is different. Now, we can all leverage the same storytelling methodologies, but we have very different organizations. And so it really is a matter of, who are the people that care most about this change being created from a mission standpoint? Who needs this the most? Versus how can we fund this the most effectively and efficiently as well? I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, please add a follow-up.
Yeah, we will be in the follow-up as well. We're going to be sharing John's contact info. So if anyone has any questions they think of after, please feel free to reach out to him. Kind of touching on the question about Habitat for Humanity, do you have any suggestions for service nonprofits that have less tangible items to show some kind of return on investment for donors?
Great question. Great question. So this is where things get very interesting from a standpoint of, what is the change that's being created? And what is the actual change? And with Habitat, there's a house, right? You have a homeless family, or a family that's on the verge of experiencing homelessness, versus now they're not. So you've got this boom, but a complete contrast. With something like, it's a little bit more intangible, let's say an advocacy firm, like an advocacy-based nonprofit, not firm, but nonprofit. Those are harder to measure, right? It's harder to measure how people view a certain topic. And so that requires a lot more of a data-heavy approach, a surveying approach, a focus group approach, all of those things, because you're really trying to advocate. Now, you can also change policy, which is obviously the entire goal of advocacy firms. And if you've influenced policy, if you've written certain articles, there's a great nonprofit we worked with in Canada that worked with formerly incarcerated individuals, so people that had been to prison or been in the legal system. They were advocating on behalf of those formerly incarcerated individuals. And that was the whole thing. Like, how do we show the proof of our work? It takes a little bit more creativity with its, we actually influenced 5 different policy changes in the last 10 years. It's great. It's really fantastic. It's a really good thing. And that's how you lean forward with the work that you're doing. So think about ways that you can measure the change that you're creating. And again, I'm not trying to keep pushing you back to that quiz, but on that fundraising quiz, you're going to be asked these questions on how are we talking about the change that we're creating? Is it clearly communicated, or is it still confusing people?
Wonderful. Thanks, John. I'm going to try and get to a few more questions before we run out of time here. How do you meld the two in terms of messaging? If your messaging is client-based and not donor-based, how would you meld the two in terms of messaging?
So I would think about it a couple different ways. And so the wonderful thing that we have with technology today, and this has improved a lot. If you've been in the game for a while, you know how much technology improved. So we think about Keela, the ability to fundraise, right? Think about how we can tag donors and they are passionate about these causes versus those causes. And then we have the ability to communicate with them. We can segment those audiences. So you think about a fundraising platform like Keela is empowering you with information to be more clear and specific with certain groups. It's fantastic. It's a tremendous gift. While at the same time, you have to think about, where's the money going to come from? How are we going to grow? How are we going to advance these causes? And this is why we believe so much in creating ideal donor profiles, because then I know, who am I going to go after? Where's the money going to come from? We have to answer that question. So where is the money to grow this program by 25% going to come from? You have to be able to answer that question. While at the same time, you have to know what is compelling those people to give. We can go several different ways. So let's just use an example. You think about a nonprofit like a performing arts center or a museum or a ballet, a symphony, something that is the arts, right? We have people that are working for Habitat for Humanity that are doing, global health type work here. We've just those 2 examples. Those have very little in common with the symphony. Better or worse, that's not my point here. My point is it's different. So what a donor gains by giving to a symphony is very different than what a donor gains by giving to Team Rubicon or Habitat for Humanity. You're providing housing over here, and you're providing the elevation of the arts in our community here. Now, a donor might give to both organizations, so we need to know what compels them to give to our organization. And we believe in surveying donor bases. We believe in asking these questions and finding out the truth so that we can build those brand scripts and make informed decisions rather than guessing. We don't want to guess. We want to know. And so we want to know exactly why people give to us. So then we can know, am I going to go down the donor-based script, or am I really going to push the mission script? Another example, what's going to give a Team Rubicon donor to give to Team Rubicon? Team Rubicon is founded by former military people in the United States, if you don't know who Team Rubicon is, and they do disaster relief. What you might be surprised is a lot of their donors give to really give back to the veteran community, because a lot of veterans volunteer with Team Rubicon. That's not the same thing as, hey, go save lives in Syria and Turkey, right? They're giving back to the veteran community. Very different, right? And then there are people that are super passionate about disaster relief. They're giving because disasters are terrible. Over 3,000 people have died in 12 hours, with what happened recently. So you have to know why people give to you. You got to know what's the mindset in the frame, because then you build your marketing after that, on top of that.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. And last question before we wrap up, because I think it's a great question from Susan. Can you quickly address stories versus facts and numbers and how you can do both?
This is from Susan.
Yes.
Susan, you are running down the path of excellence here. You are doing the right thing. So asking the wonderful question. So thank you for thinking this way. They have to work together, right? There was a survey that came out 2 years ago that I was referencing that donors care more about impact than they do stories. But I'm talking about 2% more. I'm not talking about 1,000 or 100% more. Stories have been the bell ringer forever. Stories from the field. So we've got to tell stories from the field. But what donors want is data-driven stories from the field. They want to know, give me the juice, man. Tell me what's happening. Give it to them. So let's just keep running with Habitat. Great group. How many homes have they provided? How many people what were experiencing homelessness that aren't anymore? That's just a generic output number. That's an easy one to measure. But what's the quality of life like for those families? That's a question that can be answered. Those are through surveys and focus groups and the hard work of impact data. But you have to do both. So you pull data from the good work that's being done. You do that and you tell stories with it. So the data tells the story. It's just so great. We have a client that takes care of individuals and families affected by disability around the world. They're based out of Los Angeles, but they're all over the US and all around the world. The work that they do, I mean, if you want to talk about bringing joy to your heart, it's just fabulous. They're able to tell stories of transformation, but that are data-driven stories of transformation. So these many families were on the verge of really, really tough things that I'm not going to go into the details of. But as a result of this intervention, these families are healthier, happier, higher quality of life, and just they're thriving. They went from we're on the verge of not surviving to thriving because they're able to do it the right way. And so it's so fun. And I just want you to walk away with data-driven stories of transformation. That's what lights donors of all types, government organizations, family foundations, high net worth donors, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, everyone wants data now. Data-driven stories of transformation.
Absolutely true. It's like combining the intangible and the tangible.
Yes.
All right, everyone, that includes our session for today. Thank you again so much, John, for bringing such amazing insights and best practices for us today. I think I can speak for all of us that it was extremely inspiring and great energy to bring on a Tuesday morning for me, at least. So thank you for that. Before we go, I just want to let everyone know that there will be a short survey that's going to pop up right after this session. It's only going to take you about 20 seconds. We would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback on the session, so I hope you all fill that out. We also have our next webinar coming out, which is kind of the part 2 to today's webinar. So if you really enjoyed today, please join us next week at the same time on February 14th. John's going to be joining us again to walk you through your StoryBrand checklist and to create a marketing plan that works for your nonprofit. So Meredith has left the link to register for that in the chat. So please feel free to join us next week. And thank you again, everyone. I'm excited to see you at the next webinar, and I'll pass it to John for a final goodbye.
It was my pleasure today. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm very excited for next week. Like Kim said, we're about to get very, very actionable. We're going to talk about how to build a sales funnel for your donors and how you're going to go to the next level from a fundraising standpoint. Can't wait to see everybody there. And thank you for your time today.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week.